I'm Iris Muller. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor and a proud mom of 2 children, one of whom has quadriplegic cerebral palsy and is nonverbal.
And I'm Alma Schneider, a licensed clinical social worker and the proud mom of 4 children, one of whom has Prader-Willi syndrome.
In this podcast, we discuss the uncensored truth about raising kids with disabilities.
Prepare to laugh, cry, and hopefully learn something new. This is Two Moms, No Fluff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Moms, No Fluff, the podcast where we talk about all things related to parenting children with disabilities. I'm Alma Schneider, and I'm here with my partner, Iris Muller. And we want to thank you for tuning in. Without you, we don't really have a podcast. So thank you to those who are listening all the time. If this is your first time listening in, welcome. And everyone, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a review if you like what we're doing here, because we really want to reach everybody who needs to hear what we have to say and to contribute to this conversation. So Iris, good morning.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce our topic for today?
Yes. Hi, Alma. For those of you who do not know, I just came back from an international trip, and while I'm dealing with the jet lag, I also want to share some of my wisdom about international air travel with kids with disabilities. And I know the holiday season is approaching, and a lot of families are going to travel, whether it's a domestic or international. So today we're going to discuss some aspects of traveling with kids with disabilities. Alma, do you want to start, or should I share a bit?
Why don't you start, because it's fresh in your mind from your travels.
Yeah, it is. And I want to say that probably the first kind of big portion of making an international or air travel trip successful is the planning portion. And with that, I mean that families should really consider thoroughly which company, which airline are they going to book their flights with, because sometimes it's a matter of the attitude and approach of an airline towards traveling with people with disabilities. And some airlines have better policies than others. For example, the bulkhead seats are supposed to be reserved for people with disabilities, but there are some airlines that would, just sell it to the first person who would pay for an extra leg room. And then even if you are in a desperate need of that seat, you are at no luck. So booking a specific airline is something that you should consider. And in addition, check the seating arrangements. There are now seating charts of all the different airplanes and different models and the manufacturers online, so you can see how the seats are divided and what is the leg room or proximity to a toilet, depending on what your child needs. And then you can choose whatever fits you best, and also see if the seats that fit you best are still available on such and such flight on such and such date, or you should consider an alternative date and time. So that's my first bit of information.
All right. And I think that you said something very important, as you always do, that preparation. It is so important to plan. I think what you said, to plan ahead, as opposed to, okay, we'll just get on a plane and we'll see, we'll see how things turn out. Not all of us have the luxury of doing that. And even if we think that we do, no matter what your situation is, it's always good to be prepared and plan. So my son does not have a physical disability, but there are a lot of people in our world, in our disability community, who have behavioral issues. And that might mean getting to a bathroom quickly to avoid, escalating behavior, feeling scared or upset or nervous about getting to the bathroom. So as much as possible, trying to get an aisle seat if possible, or if there's just whatever reason the child needs to walk around, that you are not bothering other people, that people, they might be asleep. You have to wake them up if you want to get into the aisle. So really I think the aisle seat for everyone is, most people want the aisle. Some people do want the window seat, but and especially a child who wants to look out the window, they might want a window seat. So we really have to think about what's going to be best for the child, to be near the aisle or near the window. Definitely don't want to be in the middle unless both family members or friends who are traveling with the child are on either side of the child, so that they won't be disrupting the trip for whoever is there. In addition, it's very important in our family to make sure that we have appropriate snacks in the uh, plane, because the snacks that are for sale, usually there aren't any snacks on a plane anymore unless it's peanuts, and that might be okay for you. But if it's not, having healthy snacks that are appropriate for your child, so that they don't get hungry. I know that if my child did not have the snack at the time, the designated snack time, there might be an issue. And I would never want to be in a position where I have to purchase something that is either incredibly expensive or really unhealthy. So planning the snacks is really, really important. Definitely planning to bring things that will occupy your child, because even though, it would be nice to live in a perfect world where everybody on the plane understands that some children struggle and have behavioral issues. Typically, people on the plane are going to get annoyed if your child is screaming or, having a tantrum, or just not occupied and being very, very loud. It would be nice if we lived in that perfect world where people were understanding, but they're probably not going to be, because, as we all know from Facebook, where people take videos on planes of what happens, people are not their best self sometimes when they're on a plane. So it's really important to have your child occupied with whatever that means, whether it's an iPad, a phone, a coloring book, anything that your child uses, books. Just make sure you have those items. And I'll leave it at that for right now. Back to you, Iris.
Yeah. So I want to go back from the planning stage to actually dealing with the airport and the time that you spend in the airport, especially going through TSA. So for those of you who have kids with disabilities, especially if it's an invisible disability, and you need some more help and consideration from the TSA staff and crew, there is a way to contact TSA in advance before you actually arrive at the airport, and giving them a pre-notice that you'll be there at such and such date and time. And then they are supposed to, I don't know if they really do, be a little bit more considerate and helpful. I would love to hear from our listeners if one of them tried this and if they got kind of a bit more compassion, because most times the TSA lines and actually going through security is a bit of an unpleasant experience. I think that one time we had our daughter go through a pet down because she's in a wheelchair, and she was like shocked that someone would touch her between her legs, which is kind of like we always tell her it's a private area, and she was like outraged. And it's kind of like those little things that can be maybe self-explanatory for us as adults, but for our children it's a bit more of a scare, the whole situation. So TSA, one thing. The other thing is for people who need accessible restrooms. Some airports now do have changing places restrooms. Thank God for Little Mercies. So these restrooms are equipped with an adult changing table and a ceiling lift to lift the person from their wheelchair to the toilet, and from the toilet to the changing table, etc. However, most of them are code protected. So if you reach the airport and you run to that bathroom after a few hours of a flight, you might find yourself in a position that you cannot really enter the restroom. You start asking random people and workers of the airport. Nobody knows. They are kind of like not very helpful, and you're struggling because you need to use the bathroom. So what I would recommend is contacting the airports in which you are going to have transfers or landing or takeoffs, and asking in advance what is the code for the changing places restrooms. And in addition, whether you are going to push your child in a manual wheelchair, a pediatric wheelchair, or really use a wheelchair that belongs to the airport, I would, in both cases, book an airport help for people with disabilities, because those people, you get another pair of hands to help you, whether it's with the pushing the wheelchair or the luggage or finding your way around the airport. Those people really know the airport very well. So if you do have to transfer from one airline to another, they would know the quickest, fastest way. They would also be able to help you find that wheelchair accessible restroom and the places that you might want to be stopping at to buy a healthy snack or something like that. I think that every bit of help is important on travel. So book those services in advance and you won't regret it.
And you're reminding me that this goes for a lot of these tips are really just for children, having children in the first place, but it can all, if a child has additional needs, you really want to make sure that you're prepared for all this. And you're reminding me that during the TSA journey, it is really important, as we know in the United States, we're still taking our shoes off when we have to go through the line. So it's very important that you have shoes for your child that are very easy to take off and put back on. And the same for you. Make sure you're either wearing clogs or flip flops, whatever it is. You don't want to have like Doc Marten boots that lace all the way up and it takes forever to take them off. It's very important that you can get through that process as quickly as possible. Don't wear belts. These again are tips for anybody who's traveling because it takes longer. But, I've been a belt wearer for a long time, and I finally started remembering when I travel not to wear a belt because they make you take it off and it takes more time. Jewelry, big jewelry, anything that is metal, you really want to try to plan not to have that on because it'll take longer. And what you said, Iris, about contacting the airport ahead of time if you have a person in your party who has a disability. This could be something really fun. And this is a great time to pull the disability card because you can get on one of those little carts and it could be really fun for the kids to travel through quickly through the airport because you might have a child who does not want to walk or, kind of collapses and you're kind of stuck. If they're having a meltdown you might miss your flight because they might, start having certain behaviors that slow you down. You might want to contact the airport ahead of time, say, I have someone with a disability. Can we get one of those wheeled, the little golf carts that take us through the airport? And that can be used as leverage with the child, if possible, if your child responds to that, letting them know that if we keep it together and if we can get through this part of the journey, then we're going to be able to go on the golf cart. So it can be used as kind of a reward. So that's something else.
Yeah, and you reminded me two other things regarding the TSA lines. For example, we used to travel with, or we still do with like pre-packed baby food because that's easy to feed. We once had a very unfortunate incident where our daughter choked on a tiny piece of apple in a flight. And you cannot call 911 when you're in a flight. It was like one of the scariest moments of my life. And luckily, all is well, but I don't wish it on anyone. So we are traveling with the pre-packed baby food so she can consume that. However, as you know, liquids are no longer allowed on airport airlines and flights. And basically, we have to bring a doctor's note because there were a couple of times that we were not prepared and they just confiscated that food. So I recommend that you stop at your pediatrician ahead of time and let the TSA people know that this is a child with a disability and they need such and such food / medication / liquid nutrition, whatever it is that you'll be carrying with you to the plane and on the flight. And then for those of you who did not manage to contact TSA in advance, I also recommend maybe handing the first TSA person you meet in the lines a note and saying, hello, I'm traveling with a child with such and such I don't know, behavioral issue or an anxiety or whatever it is. Please, if you can let the supervisor know and if you can help me go through this line successfully or something like that. I think that usually when you hand a personal note like that to one of the employees, they're prone to really want to help and accommodate. The whole situation at TSA, I think, is stressful just because there are always people in the line that are in a rush to get to a connecting flight, that are in a rush because they weren't planning for such long lines. So I also recommend to families to really consider the time allocation that their specific family needs. For example, our bathroom stops are very long and time consuming. Usually it's a process that is so difficult and tiring that both my husband and I are totally sweating and like we're like, oh my gosh, that was a half an hour of acrobatics here. So consider your situation, and if it was our family, for example, we would much rather the acrobatic scene in the airport bathroom rather than on the plane. The plane bathrooms are really, really a torture for anyone with a mobility impairment. They're tiny. It's even, I think, uncomfortable for a typical user. But in our situation, yes, we would rather struggle for half an hour in the airport than just block the bathroom on the plane for an hour in which nobody ends up clean or happy afterwards. So that's my take about the airport again.
Yeah, and it's also, talking about planning, to not have your child eat something, or anyone for that matter, that might be upsetting their stomach in any way the next day. So stay away from like 3-day-old sushi before you go on your trip. You might not want to drink copious amounts of liquids before you leave. Just planning, knowing your child and yourself, because you might have to disappear into the bathroom if you, were partying hard the night before, and there are consequences to that when you travel. So just, be mindful of what you're doing even the day or two before you get on the plane. Something else that I wanted to mention was, some people give their child medication before, like a Benadryl, to make them a little mellower, or, a little sleepy. Be very cautious with that, because it can backfire, and something like Benadryl can have the opposite effect, where your child or your baby can be very upset and hysterical from the Benadryl. So really be cautious about giving medication to do that, even if you're really concerned about what their behavior might be like on a plane.
Yeah, and talking about that, one of the things that my kids really don't like about air travel is the pressure, ear pressure in takeoff and landing. So something that I always have, and I calculate the numbers, how many connecting flights do we have, how many kids are on the plane, and then times the takeoff and landing. So I accumulate sometimes bags of lollipops that I bring with me. And those can be like the vitamin C sugar-free version. But as the plane starts running and, on the takeoff lane, then I open those and I let them suck on it. So during the time that the plane is actually changing pressure dramatically, they have something in their mouth, and the action of swallowing is supposedly helping with that. Chewing gums will do the same trick.
Mhm.
And in cases of emergency, I also have eardrops with me, and you can also ask the pediatrician while you're there asking for the TSA food permission, then to ask for some analgesic, is that the word for it? Eardrops to,
Oh,
yeah,
uh,
how do you call it? Like the ones that kind of numb the ear.
analgesic? What
I
is
don't know how you
I
say it
don't
in
know.
English.
I don't know.
Whatever, people understood my meaning, and that's another trick that we use. And then finally, I want to add on to something you mentioned, Alma, and that's like bringing activities with you on the plane. So for that, because we really traveled so many long flights with our kids, one of the things that I do that is good for kids with disabilities and kids in general is to pre-wrap things in a gift wrap with lots of tape. So it takes a lot of time for the kids to open the gifts. And sometimes the gifts are not really gifts. It's toys that they have from home, but they're happy to meet that bunny rabbit yet again on the plane. So things like that might be both an interesting activity, and one of the things that I like to buy at the dollar store or Target are those like gel stickers that you can put on the food tray, peel them on and off, and it's a sensory a friendly game. You can also stick those on the airplane window, and they peel off easily, and they can decorate here, decorate there, etc. And by the end of the flight, you just dump it all, and you have another set already pre-wrapped for the flight back home. So little things like that would keep your kids occupied. Do not trust the airline for their, I guess, audiovisual system, because the most horrific experience is being on a 15-hour flight and finding out that your seat, the video doesn't work, and you have a child who you need to entertain for so many hours. So do bring electronics with you. If you have an iPad or an extra phone, dedicate it specifically for your child, and make sure you have an good working headset, and they can be kind of occupied with that for as long as humanly possible.
Yes, the headset is very important. I myself often forget to bring my earbuds for that, and with the adapter that can go into the plane system. And last but not least for me, just like everything with disabilities, if it's possible for your child to convey this to you, ask them. Nothing for them without them. So ask them, what would make your plane ride, more pleasant? What would you like to bring? So ask them, and then, you might not be able to accommodate everything they're asking for, but if there's a particular stuffed animal or a particular game, or you can save a special movie that they wanted to watch before, save that for the plane ride so that they're looking forward to it. But ask them if they can communicate that to you. That's even better.
Awesome. Alma, thank you so very much for joining me on this lovely episode. And I'm happy to be back, and I don't need to deal with airports anytime soon. Yes. And happy to be chatting with you again, like normal good old days.
I know, I missed you.
So thank you everyone for listening. If you do have more tricks and tips that you can share with other parents, please comment and let us know so we can share your wisdom with our other listeners and other families. I know it's a stressful thing to travel internationally and domestic with our kids sometimes, but it's doable. So have fun during your holiday season and enjoy your family travel. Alma, anything to add?
That's it. Thank you, Iris, as always. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
For more information, please go to www.twomomsnofluff.com. Thank you.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe and give it a 5-star rating so more people can hear it. Thank you.